Welcome to The Craft. I'm your host, May Globus. This podcast is a collection of intimate conversations on artistry, mastery, and life with talented, passionately curious creatives and entrepreneurs. Most are dear friends, some are those I've admired from afar. I hope you enjoy these conversations, this exploration of the humanity that connects all of us, as much as I do having them. Thank you for being here and for listening. This episode is brought to you by Before, an incredible new self-care brand that just launched their first products, a line of purifying toothpastes. I'm obsessive about my teeth and brush them usually 3 times a day, so I'm super excited to be using Before. It ticks off many boxes of what a good toothpaste should be. Their custom supermint flavor actually tastes really good, and the consistency is silky, and at the same time, it doesn't leak out of the tube, which is a total pet peeve of mine. It's also non-abrasive, so it doesn't destroy your tooth enamel. All the harmful ingredients have been replaced by clean alternatives, and their custom blend of fluoride and dentist-approved ingredients totally promotes optimal mouth health. Before also deeply cares about our planet. Their tubes are made from 100% recyclable plant-based sugarcane and creates 50% less carbon footprint than traditional toothpaste tubes. As you all can tell from the show, I'm a huge fan of good, purposeful design, and let me tell you, the design and color palette of these are beautiful. The tube stands upright on your counter and makes your bathroom look minimal and chic. Visit their website, before.com, and enter the code CRAFT10, CRAFT10, to receive 10% off your entire purchase. One-time use per customer. I'm a huge fan of what they stand for. You won't be sorry, and your teeth and the planet will thank you. As a number of you know, I'm also a certified sound therapy practitioner and founder of Oto Healing, a sound therapy studio and practice. Sound has been a healing modality through many cultures for thousands of years. Oto's approach to sound is rooted in both art and science, the art being the history of sound, the science being quantum physics, biology, brainwave states, and more. All listeners of the show get 15% off their first private 1-hour session. Visit otohealing.com to book yours now. Some people bring a serene energy when they come into a room. Amanda Giannakos is one of them. The co-founder of Movement by NM and head of marketing and in-house counsel for Omnifilm Entertainment, began her career working in film before finding her truest calling and helping others cultivate an intrinsic joy and love for movement. A Vancouverite all her life, she was raised an only child. Her father worked in government, and her mother is a longtime television producer. Like her swimmer parents, she was athletic, doing gymnastics, and eventually found her stride playing competitive tennis. She also wanted to be seen as an adult from a young age, and spent her time with her mother at the office, absorbing the ins and outs of the film industry. After high school, she worked as a distribution assistant at Omnifilm, answering fan mail for wellness shows. It was at this time that her own interest in yoga, movement, and strength training really began to grow, and she knew she could lead in this space. From this, Movement by NM was born, bringing to the market a more cinemagraphic, storytelling lens to digital fitness in a wide range of disciplines. In this conversation, we explore growing up as an only child, the right way to breathe from the diaphragm, the grace and flow of sports, her mother being a trailblazer in bringing health and wellness to television, and how she influenced Amanda, vulnerability in creating for others, training new mothers to feel at home with their bodies again, current and emerging fitness trends, how to be a steward for your body, and much more. Please enjoy this conversation with a lovely, kind, and insightful Amanda Giannakos. Amanda Giannakos.
Hi.
Hello. Welcome to The Craft.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. I'm really excited to have this conversation.
Me too.
Yes, I am so fascinated to hear your thoughts about movement and art and the body, and obviously what you're doing right now with your company. But how are you feeling? Let's start there.
I'm good. Yeah, I'm really good. I feel like I just drove in from Squamish. I did a little bit of stretches in my car. This is a beautiful space. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. What kind of stretches were you doing in your car?
Well, I was doing some just breathing, like diaphragmatic breathing, just to kind of help me with my voice. You know, sometimes if you talk a lot, you kind of get a little bit like
winded,
or like up here in your neck instead of like in your belly. And then just some neck stretches because driving.
Yeah. It's so true about the breathing because I've noticed recently I'm moving next week, which obviously adds a layer of
Yes.
stress. And so I feel like I'm shallow breathing, like I'm breathing more from my chest
Yeah.
than my belly.
Yeah.
And then, as you said, you get more winded when you talk.
Absolutely.
And you're like, oh my gosh, I need to catch my breath after that.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's like clavicular breathing, I think is what it's called, where you're like up here in the top of your chest. And it can actually cause us to be more stressed, which makes sense because when you're stressed, you breathe shallow. And it's like if you're not regulating your breath, it can really have an impact.
Yeah, it feels restrictive when you're just kind of breathing
Totally.
up here. So, because even though I'm like, oh, we need to get to your childhood, but I'm actually really fascinated by all of this stuff. What's the proper way to diaphragmatically breathe?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, I think I've learned it from so many different teachers, and everyone sort of has their different way of explaining it. But I think when you think about breathing, you almost want to not breathe into like the chest, and you want to think about breathing in a 360-degree expansion. So like for me, it's really helpful to think about breathing into like my back, because that's not where like your chest is so not your back. So it's like, okay, if I'm breathing into my back, I'm expanding through the diaphragm rather than like breathing up. It's like you're breathing out instead of breathing up.
Oh, I see.
If that makes sense.
So almost sort of thinking of yourself as kind of like almost like a balloon where everything is expanding sort of at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I need to use that visual next time.
Yes.
I'm feeling the clavicular.
Clavicular. I hope I'm saying that right.
I'm sure it's right. We'll make it right. Oh, but let's go back to your childhood and you growing up in North Burnaby.
Yes.
And tell me about that time in your life.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I had a great childhood. I feel like it was a really, I don't know, classic childhood. It was, you know, before everyone had cell phones. It was, I spent a lot of time playing with my friends, my neighbors, and just really, really had great parents, really loving, really supportive. And I was an only child. So that definitely, you know, everyone sort of has different ideas about what that might mean. But it was cool for me. I think I had an imaginary sister at one point, so maybe I wanted to have a sibling.
Did she have a name?
You know what? I don't think she did, but I was really adamant that, you know, we would wait for her. Like when we were at the park, my mom would say, oh, you know, it's time to go. And I'd say, well, my sister is still swinging, so we can't go yet. So she was very much part of my narrative. I don't remember this because I was too young, but
it's a good negotiation tactic.
Yes, I'm like,
blame it on the sister.
Maybe this was more of a tactic than like me desiring to have a sibling. But yeah, no, it was great. My parents are very, very different. My dad is like, and I think I'm really a mix of the two of them. So my dad is like very logical, analytical, very super organized. Like when I think about my dad, I think about a clipboard. Like, you know, whether it was we were at IKEA or like he was planning my birthday party or whatever we were doing, he always had his clipboard and he always was prepared. And my mom was like really creative, artistic. And so very, very different. And I think I really benefited from that, how they complemented each other.
And what were you like?
I was very, I wanted to be grown up. Like, I think I really wanted to be taken seriously. I remember I would be the type of kid who would answer the phone when my parents were having a party and someone would say, "Oh, I'm lost. Can you, I need directions. Can you put your mom on?" And I'd be like, "No, I know the directions." And they wouldn't believe me, of course. But I'd be like, "No, listen, I know. Take me seriously." And so I kind of always had this desire for responsibility or to be like an adult, even as a young kid.
Yeah, I wonder if that's also an only child,
Maybe.
Trait, because you are surrounded by adults all the time.
Totally.
That's kind of other than your friends.
Yeah. Yes.
That's like the next level or what's immediately available to you.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I think my mom jokes that I got kicked out of daycare because I wanted to have tea with the supervisors instead of having a nap. I was like, "I'm not having a nap. I would like to have tea with you. I'm not a child."
You're like, "I want to have adult conversations at 3.
That was me.
But you were also sporty.
Yes. Yes. So both of my parents were super athletic. They were actually both really competitive swimmers when they were growing up. My dad actually was an incredible water polo player, which I don't know if you I mean, it's kind of a obscure sport, but it's so hard because you have to tread water and throw anyways. So he was an incredible swimmer, and so was my mom. And so I think they tried to get me into swimming, but some kids are swimmers, love the water, and I was not one of them, I guess.
Yes, neither am I. Swimming is not my strong suit.
Yeah, I like lounging at the beach. But I'm not a swimmer. Yeah, so I think they knew that they wanted to put me in sports, and I tried a bunch of different things. I think I tried soccer, but it wasn't my jam. And eventually I found figure skating, and I got into that, and it was I don't know, as a 7 or 8-year-old, it's crazy how intense it is and how competitive. And so I was going before school and after school, and I had competitions on the weekends. But it was really fun, and I got to wear cool outfits and be creative with my routines and stuff. And that was really cool.
And were you in gymnastics as well?
I did some gymnastics as well before figure skating, which I really loved, but I think I didn't quite, I'm a bit, I don't know. I feel like I wasn't naturally compact and springy. I was a bit lanky. And so I feel like I kept kind of getting myself injured, or I didn't quite understand the somersault tuck.
Yeah, spatially it just didn't
totally
work.
Yeah. But I ended up getting sort of back into gymnastics later on, more recently, and acrobatics and stuff, which was super fun. But I just think gymnasts are so cool. It's just incredible, the strength that they have. And so sometimes I'm like, "Oh, I wish I had stuck with gymnastics."
But you went into tennis.
Tennis, yes.
Competitively.
Yes. So after figure skating, after I retired at 8, we were sort of looking for another sport, and my dad loves tennis. Both my parents do, but my dad really loved it. So I started getting into tennis, and we found this really incredible junior program out of Coquitlam that I got involved in. And it was just it's such intense training before school, after school, tons of conditioning work, and just a lot of fun, and so much learning about losing and winning and being a team. And it was really great.
Sort of reflecting back on all the different sports that you were involved with And a lot of them involve some kind of like flow of movement, right? Like if I think of um, gymnastics, there's kind of like this, maybe one of the particular ones, but like there is some kind of like beauty and flow to it. Same with figure skating. And then also if you think of how tennis players like swing their arms, there's
Totally.
also a kind of grace to it. So maybe that's what I'm looking for, like graceful sports.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's really true. Like that always appealed to me. And I think if I had been a little bit more confident, I maybe would have pushed myself into dance because I was always just in awe of dancers. And I just thought that I had a few friends in high school that were dancers. And I was like, oh, I wish I could do this. But I felt like it was too late, which of course it never is, which is all about what I do now. But yeah, I think that dancerly kind of ethos is something that I really admire.
I'd love to explore what your mom did in film, and what role that played in your growing up.
Absolutely.
She was working, and she still is, at Omnifilm Entertainment.
Yes.
So film and going to work with her was a huge part of your growing up too.
It was. Yes. Again, I think just that idea of me not wanting to be a kid sometimes, I always would rather go to work with my mom than go to school. And I just have such fond memories of the times when, she would take me out of school and bring me to the office, which is the same office that I go to now, which is just when I think about that, I'm like, wow, I can't believe I've been coming here for, decades. And Gastown has changed so much in that time, of course. But yeah, I think I was really exposed to a very entrepreneurial and creative type of work that I didn't realize was so unique. But like it's just so different than having a job that you go to and that you leave at the office. She had her office at home and she was always kind of on, for better or for worse. Although back in that day, like I feel like when you were always on, like there's no cell phones or anything, so there's a limit to that.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's like, okay, we need to put in some boundaries. But yeah, I really grew up around her work, and that was special because it exposed me to a different way of working or a different relationship with one's work. And I saw that she was so passionate about telling these stories that she was producing, and producing is so entrepreneurial in that you have an idea that you want to turn into a TV show or a documentary, and you have to get people to buy into your vision and to fund it, basically. And to see her go after that, and then also to see those ideas come to life, and then to be able to, go with her onto sets and stuff was just really unique and definitely shaped my view of work.
Was it more rare to see female producers back then?
That's a great question. It's funny because I didn't think about it, because it was like, she's just doing it.
What she's doing. Yeah.
But I know that she definitely has had to work hard to prove herself as a female producer and to be taken seriously. I think was harder. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I suppose as it really was for a lot of our mothers.
Yes.
Back then, and surviving the patriarchy.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
But she was also very much a pioneer in the type of content she was producing. And she had this lens on creating content around wellness and yoga and retreats, which was sort of new back then. Yoga wasn't quite the movement that it is now.
Totally. Yeah, she really, I think, craved for her own life as a peace and stillness, and wanted to find places in the world that had that quality to them, and to make television that actually gave people a sense of peace and a sense of transformation, not just entertainment. Entertainment is important too, but and I think that was very new back then.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a time when there was just television. Like, it was before YouTube. It was before you could create anything that you wanted. You needed to find someone who would put it on TV. And so there were pioneering broadcasters as well that got behind that and were like, yeah, okay, this is cool. This is an interesting type of content for people. And that, I think, that desire to have people transformed and to have a sense of wellness through audiovisual means, essentially, was something that's always been really important to her.
What was the series that she started? Quiet Places?
Yes.
That went to different retreats?
Yes. Quiet
That must
Places.
have been mind-blowing, because people really, I feel like retreats are, everybody, has, not everybody, but they're just, it's more a thing that people do now.
We understand
what we get
is.
it. It's like in the vernacular of people who are living in, in privileged positions, like maybe I'll say that. But she got to probably travel to some really wild and cool retreats.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, there's so many on the West Coast. Like, I know she, on the islands, like the Gulf Islands, I feel like it's the islands are very spiritual, and there's lots of retreat centers there. So there were a number of episodes filmed there. I know she went to Costa Rica. Actually, we all went as a family, which I remember very fondly. I think for a retreat centered around wildlife and dolphins, which
cool.
I think they never actually saw dolphins. This is kind of the funny thing about documentary filmmaking, is like, you go and then sometimes it just
you cross your fingers and it maybe doesn't happen. But tell me that about your journey into film, and obviously this has now translated into many other things. But you started working there.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So part of my striving for adulthood, I moved out quite young. I was just so excited to get out into the world, and, got a job at Starbucks, and then also got a job with Omnifilm answering fan mail for their various shows, and as a distribution assistant. So I was doing like filing and business affairs and stuff like that. But yeah, I was answering fan mail, and she'd produced this yoga show that had aired in the States in a time when I think middle rural America had no exposure to yoga. And people were just like, what is this? This is amazing. This has changed my life. I can't believe how great I feel. It's only 22 minutes, but I'm a new person. And I just got letter after letter after letter. And finally I was like, I should try this show. Like, people really like this show. I should probably try it. And I did. And it was like, wow, it is amazing. Like, this is incredible. And it kind of got me started down this path of wanting to teach yoga and wanting to learn more about it, and seeing the possibility for, I guess, similar to my mom's vision of wanting to help people be more well and transform through television and through video content. And I always felt like there's something that we could do, something bigger we could do here than selling yoga DVDs.
Yeah. Tell me about your feelings about the artistry of movement, the artistic side of it.
Ooh, great question. I feel like this is so broad. I mean, I think something that I really strongly believe is that creativity and movement are so linked, and they really feed into each other. And I think when we're physically stuck in our bodies, or we're physically kind of like stagnant, for lack of a better word, I think in our creativity and in our minds, we can start to be kind of in a similar place. And when we actually physically move, like if you move physically out of your comfort zone and like do a kickboxing class or do a dance class when you're like afraid of doing it, it just gives you permission to do something similar, I think, creatively. Like, I think that the barriers that hold us back from art, which I think are so real, like as an artist, I'm sure you've experienced that sense of like resistance. Like there's just this sense of resistance every time you go to put something new into the world. It's like, I don't know how to explain it other than
vulnerable.
resistance.
It's vulnerable.
It's so vulnerable.
When you create something, you know, I feel it's in service to yourself, right? You're doing it because you love it, but you also hope that others love it too. And that's the vulnerability of it is, will they or will they not?
Totally. Yeah. And I think for most artists that I know, there's also always a sense, no matter if you are like at the Oscars or in your basement, like you always have a sense of like, I'm not good enough. Like this isn't good enough, or I shouldn't do this, or
why am I even in this room?
Yeah, like I should be smaller, you know? And so I think movement, like we have similar barriers when it comes to movement. It's like, I'm not strong enough for this. I shouldn't, why am I even trying to go for a run? I can't even run. I can only run for like a minute and then I'm tired. Like I should just give up. It's like, I can only write for like 3 pages. I should just give up. And I think breaking through those barriers on either side can feed into the other. And it's like a movement practice for someone who's artistic and creative, I think is just so important.
Yeah. And I suppose too, the other artistic side of movement is it's an expression of
totally
who you are and how you feel in this world. And that's really beautiful. Like I think of contemporary dancing.
Yeah.
And I think it's beautiful because there's so much emotion in that genre of movement. And it tells like an incredible story often.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a whole other side of movement is itself so creative. And I think movement artists, whether they're dancers or whether they're personal trainers, like it's so creative. And I think they don't always, I mean, I think a dancer would for sure view themselves that way, but I think like athletes are so creative. Like even what you were saying about tennis, it's like there's a grace to it. And even in how you are strategic and creative in different plays, like it's so creative. Movement is so creative. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it really is. Tell me about Movement by NM. And it's an online and digital fitness platform. But you do fitness, you do yoga, you do martial arts, and then there's this incredible storytelling aspect to it. So not only do you have the digital classes, but you also have these short films like the Seasons one that I watched, and there's a beautiful cinematography to those videos as well. So yes, tell me about how this all started and why you believe the storytelling is so important too, and not just the video of how to do the thing.
Mm, great question. Um, how it started, I guess, just going back to that idea of like the yoga brand being more and wanting to offer people more. And that kind of eventually evolved into this idea of movement by an M that my mom and I have been working on together. And yeah, we wanted to offer lots of different disciplines because I think there's so much value in trying different types of movement and, like I said, breaking out of your comfort zone. And then yeah, the storytelling side of things, something that we always say is we don't want to separate the inspiration from the instruction. And we really want to offer a space for movement and fitness that motivates people to move, not for a purely aesthetic reason, or not for a short-term reason, like, to have a bikini body or whatever. That's a classic example I always use. But we want to help people cultivate like an intrinsic love and joy for movement that I think we all sort of have as kids and then we sort of lose.
Yeah, agreed.
And so that's our movement kind of philosophy. And I think when it comes to the storytelling and the inspiration, we want to offer different ways to kind of get at that, like what motivates you and break the typical pattern of, what might bring someone to a fitness practice.
Mm-hmm. I know that you yourself also focus on pre and postnatal performance training, and I was watching this video the other day that was talking about celebrities and how they seem to bounce back from pregnancy so quickly, and there's a lot of different layers in there. But what it made me realize, and in talking to my girlfriends that have had babies, they're like, it's an intense and traumatic experience on the body, and it does take time to rebuild again. And so what's your experience working with mothers who are trying to mm, recover and sort of get back to a semblance of their health and their well-being and their form before baby?
Yeah. And yeah, just feeling like your body. I think when you go through pregnancy and birth and postpartum, there's definitely a feeling like, whoa, this is not my body right now. And I remember that feeling so well. And I remember postpartum, like when I started to feel like, oh, okay, I think this is my body again. Like it feels like me again. And it's so interesting because you're like nurturing this life. And for a long time, like it's just like your body is their whole nourishment.
It's almost like it doesn't belong to you anymore for a time.
Totally.
It's just like keeping this little being alive.
Yeah. And there's so many, like when I got pregnant, I had a whole other motivation for movement because I know how important it is and how good it is for the baby to be moving. And I was like, oh, even if I don't really feel like doing this, going on this walk or doing this class, like it's actually really important and I should just do it. I need to do it. Or, I should have this really healthy meal right now, even though I'm busy and I'm on the run because it's really important. So you kind of just get this, like, it's not just about me, like, and my physical body. It's like, it's for someone else in a really direct way. But yes, postpartum, I think something that a couple things. One, I think because women are rarely given the tools to heal properly postpartum, there are many women in their 50s, 60s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s that had kids and that never actually healed fully. And I'm super, super passionate about helping those women kind of connect to their core and rebuild those core muscles that are just like, if you think about how the body changes during pregnancy, like your abdominal muscles literally separate, and there's so much work to bring them back together and to get everything functioning again, especially if you've had a C-section or there's so many ways that a birth can be just, even if you have the most, I don't know, easy, for lack of a better word, birth, it's still like a huge event that takes time to recover from. So I think there's no timeline on like postpartum recovery, and that's something that I really believe and feel strongly about.
I wonder if there is some kind of also acceptance of my body isn't the same. Like there's no getting back to what my body was. It's almost like as you reflect on, your own past and the way that you're emotionally healing moving forward, it's like, you're not the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're just this evolved version of yourself. And I suppose that happens with your body. I mean, I haven't had children yet, but as you grow older, your body changes.
Totally.
And so you do kind of mourn an old version of it and have to come into the acceptance of what it is now.
Yeah.
I guess that's just life, the cycle of life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, tell me a little bit about your thoughts around the digital fitness movement and how, I mean, obviously when we went through the pandemic, there was an explosion of it. And now we're sort of quote unquote back to normal life. Where is it at now?
I think in a big way, the pandemic and everyone going online for that period of time really broke down barriers and stigma about working out at home. I think people were really reluctant or didn't think that it was an option for them before. And now, even though a lot of people might be going back to the gym, I think people are more likely to complement that with at-home classes and workouts. And I think that's great because, well, I've always loved working out at home because it's comfortable. Like I can be in my pajamas, and it's a lot less time and logistics, of course. And I think, well, now as a mother of a small child, it's hard to get out of the house. So I think depending on your season of life, it's a great option. And so I think it's wonderful that people have really come to see that it's doable, and that you just kind of need to make space, literally physical space for it in your home, which is something that I always, whenever someone says, oh, I can't get around to doing workouts at home, it's like, well, have you made a space for it? It's like, no, I have to, if I'm going to do a class, I need to move my coffee table and like my couch and pull my mat out of the garage. And it's like, well, yeah, of course you're not going to do it.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. You do have to like make the space for it.
Yeah.
Like you said, like actually do the things. What do you notice about what people want for their bodies nowadays? Is it, I mean, it's probably everything, but I'm curious, is it more like, do people want strength? Do they want to be more embodied and connected to their body? Is there some kind of trend that you're noticing, and what the modern day contemporary man or woman wants to feel
Mm,
when it comes to their body?
I think for the people that I'm connected to in my life, and also the Movement by NM membership, what I've noticed is a lot of people want like restorative practices, whether that's really just, resting and lying on a bolster and kind of just breathing, or restorative in the sense of restoring a sense of balance to the body after, like, from your activities, which I would say most of our activities are like on a computer or at a desk. And so restoring a sense of movement is often like specific mobility work for the back and the neck and the shoulders, practices that support your life rather than are an end in themselves, if that makes sense. Like, I think people want to feel good as they move through their days. And if you take 20 or 30 minutes to work on the types of movements that you're going to do through your day, that can be really powerful. So almost like a restorative or a preparatory practice.
Yeah. I have a question around flexibility, and this is really just a personal question because I do remember when I was younger and we'd have gym class, we'd have all of these, once a year we would do these like strength exercises and these flexibility exercises, which would measure how flexible you are, how strong you are. So for the strength one, it was like, can you hold yourself in a pull up?
I feel
or
like I remember
do you
this.
remember that? I don't know if it was part of, I don't know, some like province-wide program.
Probably.
But I remember that it was actually quite intimidating because it was sort of like you were in competition with everyone else. And now
totally remember this.
Yeah. And looking back, you're like, of course, everyone's body is different. So what I did notice is I'm strong, but I'm not flexible. And so my question is really around flexibility. During the pandemic, I really started to introduce yoga as a more of a daily practice, even if it's 5 to 10 minutes. And I do notice that my flexibility has improved, but I'm not limber. Like, I'm not malleable. I'm not like Gumby or anything. Is flexibility something that you really truly can work on and become limber and Gumby, and my face can be like near my knees? Or is that just a complete different body type?
I think it's a mix, for sure. It's definitely a mix. But I think flexibility is one of those things that you need to train really intentionally if you want to make big, quote unquote, improvements in it. And there's like active flexibility where you have flexibility, but you're never stretching to the point where your muscles can't support it. So like I could do the splits, but if I was standing, I can't lift my leg up into a splits position with my muscles. I have the flexibility, sort of, because I can cheat with gravity and pressure, but I don't actually have active flexibility. And so if you think about like a dancer, they have, or gymnast, like incredible active flexibility where they actually can hold, like they're flexible but strong. And I think that's the best place to be. As someone who worked really hard on flexibility, to be, again, quote unquote, better at yoga during that time of my life, and like totally destroyed my body and had no strength to support myself. I think that's kind of a misconception about flexibility, that flexibility in itself is like a good thing, when actually you want to be like have active flexibility where you're like strong and flexible.
Right. That
Yeah.
you can do both.
Totally.
Yeah. Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
So the fact that you're getting a little bit more flexible is probably a good thing, because it probably means you're like slowly building flexibility with strength,
right,
in a way that's like good for your body.
Yeah. And it's almost like isolated flexibility, because there's like certain things that I can do, like a butterfly. Like, yeah, I can really bend over or whatever. But if my legs are out in front of me and I have to reach and touch my toes, like that's a different story.
Well, hamstring flexibility is like, when it comes to yoga, I think that's the one that limits the most common yoga poses.
Mm-hmm.
And also with our lifestyle of sitting, I think is the one that really can get
that makes sense,
compromised easily.
I guess because that muscle is like contracting because you're not using it.
Yeah.
Just like sitting there.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So fascinating.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But it also makes you realize, like, if I'm looking back at it and I am a little bit more flexible than I used to be. I think it goes back to what you're saying, that, you can push your body to more limits than you may think in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Well, just a few more questions for you. I'd love to know what being fit and having well-being means to you.
Ooh. I think that it goes back to what I was saying about moving through your life well. Fitness for me is feeling strong and also pain-free, because I think that's it's something that so many people I know have, back pain or shoulder pain or neck pain, that can compromise their desire or ability to do the things that they love to do. So being fit for me means, being able to move through life and to do what I love to do, to take care of my daughter, like to be able to to pick her up. Like, honestly, when I think about holding a 25-pound kettlebell and like cooking dinner, I'm like, that takes a lot of fitness.
Yeah.
So being able to care for her in a really physical way is really important. Feeling strong, being able to come to my mat and like just play, and challenging my body in different ways. I think it's almost like a process for me. It's like a daily process of like showing up and stewarding this body.
I like that. The stewarding of the body.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's something that I would like to, think about. I love that combination of words, actually.
Yeah.
Being a steward. You always think of being like a steward of the earth.
Yeah.
And I feel like those words are used often, but, and the planet is our home, but our bodies are our home too.
Totally. Yeah. And it's how we can accomplish anything that we're supposed to. Like, like it's so important to be a steward of it.
Well, my final question that I ask everyone, with what you do, what is it that you want to leave behind in the world?
I love this question. I love legacy. It's such a powerful idea and something so important to think about. I think it does come back to the stewardship of the body. And I would love if my work with movement in particular, and just in how I work with people when it comes to their physical bodies and fitness, would give people that sense of stewardship over their bodies, and help them almost with their legacies, like help them be stronger and more confident and able to achieve what they're wanting to, whether that's being able to play with their grandkids into their 70s and 80s, or feeling comfortable in their body after giving birth, or feeling strong and able to tackle anything at work or at home. I think if I can contribute to that in people's lives, I will feel like I've done a lot.
Well, congratulations on everything that you are building and helping other people be stewards for their body. If people want to connect, or if people want to access Movement by NM, where can they go? And then if they want to connect with you, where can they go?
Well, for Movement by NM, I would say on our website, movementbynm.com. And if they want to connect with me, probably Instagram would be a good way, at Giannakos, which is a tricky name, or my email, which is also linked in my Instagram.
Amazing. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your story, and also sharing all your thoughts on movement and the artistry of that, which is something that, I think about often, and it being embodied, and what better lives that we can lead if we are connected to our bodies and how we move through this life. So I appreciate your time.
Totally. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. As always, thank you for being here and for listening. To learn more about today's guest, visit the episode page for show notes and links on wearethecraft.com. You can find the entire podcast archive here, or explore more conversations with past guests on Spotify and Apple. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button on these platforms, including YouTube, to get notified when new episodes drop. Any likes and shares on social media are deeply appreciated too. Sound and audio engineering for the show are by Andrew and Jaba Gaspis. All guest portraits and images are by Juno Kim. Appreciate you all, and see you again soon.